So when I was looking at the 120 counties, there's 120 counties in Kentucky. 120. And for every county, you got a sheriff, you got constables, you got magistrates, judge executive, jailers, and then there's cities, so mayor, city councilmen, and sheriff's deputies, and there's judges and state representatives, state senators, and circuit court judges, district judges. There's county clerks, circuit clerks, lots of politicians, soil and water conservation district supervisor, lots and lots of politicians. But there's 120 counties, and when I was looking at the different counties, a lot of these are named after racist pieces of shit. Absolute racist. I'm going to focus on Wayne County for right now. Wayne County. It's on the southern border of Kentucky, right next to Tennessee, which was the state that founded the Ku Klux Klan, the state that killed Martin Luther King Jr. because he was standing up for the garbage workers, right? He wanted the garbage workers to have the right to unionize. That was the point. That's what Martin Luther King Jr. died for in Memphis, but apparently there was a Tennessean that just did not want that to happen. So Wayne County is named after Mad Anthony Wayne, who was, some people would say, oh, you know, like motherfucking Andrew Jackson, act like he's some sort of great fucking genius, some military hero. Wayne County is also a prohibition or dry county. It's a dry county. So that means they still believe in prohibition. We had the 18th Amendment, then we had the 21st Amendment, right? 18th Amendment said no alcohol could be sold in the United States. 21st Amendment undoes the 18th Amendment. They said it was a noble experiment. We tried to do it. It didn't work. We created Al Capone. We created more crime and more destruction. Let's bring alcohol back, right? And now we have Budweiser, who renamed their beer America. And so that's... it's a dry fucking county. There's still prohibition, right? We're still living, some counties, 50 counties out of 120 are still living in the fucking prohibition era. And when was the, let's go with the 18th Amendment so I can know when, what year it was passed, but also the 21st Amendment. But General Mad Anthony Wayne, I'll tell you why he's a piece of shit. So 1933 is when they ratified the 21st Amendment, and then 1920. So 1919, women get a right to vote. 1920, they made alcohol illegal. 1933, right after 4 years after the Great Depression, they brought alcohol was allowed back. Apparently, some people thought you had a right to do what you want to your own body, and that was acceptable. So 50 out of 120 counties, was that about 40% or so? 50 out of 120, 5/7. That's as far as you can reduce that fraction. But that's fucking ridiculous. Not only do we have prohibition when it comes to alcohol in 50 of these counties, including fucking Wayne County, backwards ass Wayne County. Wayne County is named after a racist piece of shit. One of the worst racists out there. I was ranking him from 1 to 20, and he's up there. I mean, he's up a 15 or a 20. And there's one little thing here. It says that the Confederate government of Kentucky, there's a temporary Confederate government who... they tried to establish something and then they got ran out. But they want to rename Wayne County to Zollicoffer County in honor of Felix Zollicoffer, who died at the Battle of Mill Springs. Just to give you a sense of the racism. I mean, they're on the southern border, right next to Tennessee, one of the racist fucking states out there. And Wayne County is named after General Mad Anthony Wayne. Other counties that are racist, and then I'm going to get into Mad Anthony Wayne. Mad Anthony Wayne, right? Fucking crazy, psychotic Anthony Wayne. But the other ones, you have McCreary. So he's named after, I think, James B. McCreary, who was John Hunt Morgan's bitch. He fought for the Confederacy. So that's, I mean, you can't get really much worse than that. The Breckinridge County, John Breckinridge, he was a slave owner. And I think between 10 to 20, right, how many slaves does he actually own? If he's like a massive plantation, but if he has one or two, I don't know. I feel like with the pioneers, I have to fucking battle it out with them, because there's some people like Mad Anthony Wayne that just want to kill all the Native Americans that they possibly could so they could steal their land, and that's all they gave a shit about. But then there's other pioneers that just want to come in and settle, and then they would defend their home. And so it's a different thing. It's like a George Rogers Clark versus versus in Abraham Lincoln, his Abraham Lincoln's father. So that's the difference, so there's, all these different distinctions. So let's see, what else is there? There's McGolphin, there's Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves, right? So he's a plantation owner, that he should get a 20 for that. But then he also said all men are created equal, created the Constitution, right? Set up the country of America that we live in today. So I give him a 19, right? I mean, just take one off. But there's way worse than those. There's the McGolphin County. McGolphin, who was the governor of Kentucky, who says, I'm not going to fight for the North, and deflected right to the South, and then eventually the legislature kicked him out because we said, we don't want no Confederate lovers out of here. Get the fuck out of here. You want to fight against the country? Get the fuck out. And so we kicked McGolphin out. The legislature kicked him out because he wasn't going to go with Lincoln's War, but he also, there's a fucking county named after the piece of shit that was wanting to fight with the Confederacy. McCreary County, too. He's a Confederate. We kept electing all these fucking Confederate governors. Kentucky was said to have seceded after the Civil War. So that's a couple. Lee County, Robert E. Lee, and Estill is he killed Native Americans. Actually got his dick shot off. Fucking Estill, I think I want to say James Estill, got his dick shot off at some skirmish against the Native Americans. There's actually 9 counties in Kentucky after the Battle of Frenchtown, Battle of River Raisin, that they died. The War of 1812, they died, and then we named all these counties after them because it was a fucking massacre. Oh, remember the River Raisin? Well, do you remember the River Raisin? The Battle of Frenchtown, when Kentuckians marched all the way up to Detroit, trudging in the snow, fucking marching all the way to Detroit to go fight the French and their Native American allies. And as soon as we went to invade their fort, then they wiped us all out. They wiped the Kentucky ancestors out, at least. I don't know if those are any of my ancestors. My mother's side, Germans, got here in 1869 in northern Kentucky, so that's after 1812. On my father's side, his bloodline seemed to be here a little bit longer. And then, bloodlines, it's just, you got your parents, and then you got your grandparents, and then you got your great-grandparents, so it's like 2, 4, 8, 16. So the farther you go back, actually, the more ancestors that you got. So what's my point, huh? My point is to just point out Mad Anthony Wayne was a fucking psycho. Fuck Mad Anthony Wayne, right? He's supposed to be this great fucking leader, but he was the one that stops the Indian fighting and the Northwest. He goes into Ohio and Indiana, and he fights the Miami and the Shawnee in 1794, Battle of fucking Timbers or some shit, then a treaty, and then all the fighting, Native American stops, and, it's perfect harmony between the whites and the natives. That's not true, but that's essentially what we're led to believe. And so, what the fuck actually happened? Well, what the fuck actually happened was the American Revolution was fought in order to take Native American land. You had the French, you had the Spanish, you had the Dutch, you had the British, you had, all these competing interests. And eventually the Americans, you had Patrick Henrys, your George Washingtons, and some of the other ones, they wanted land. They were land speculators, so they wanted all that fucking land. And they were looking out west, and they saw all the Native Americans and all the land, and how all these great empires were competing and fighting to take this land. And they were like, fuck them, we're going to take this land for ourselves. And then once they won, right, there were the 13 colonies, and then they started going out west. They got Kentucky, and then they got Kentucky's the 15th state. I forget what the 14th one, but they started encroaching out west. It was a territory, Ohio, Indiana, and then all the way out west. So eventually, just started taking piece by piece. Started out as an imperialistic empire, taking other people's land, stealing other people's resources, which is, that's a good boost, right? Here's a bunch of fucking land. Well, what would happen to the original people? Don't worry about it. You got land. What the fuck do you care, right? So I want to list all the Native Americans that Mad Anthony Wayne had fought against. And so I'm just actually going to look at just basically 2 of them. I'm looking at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, and then I'm looking at the Western Confederacy. So there could be more. I'm not getting all of them, but I think this is a lot of them. Okay, so the Western Indian Confederacy was the one that was actually fighting the Northwest Indian War, which was 1785 to 1795. 10 years, a 10-year war after the American Revolution. Then you had the Northwest Indian War in order to steal their fucking land. And so who were the Western Indian Confederacy? You had the Council of the Three Fires. And that's actually, the Council of the Three Fires is specific ones too. The Illinois Confederacy, that's like fucking 5 or 6 tribes right there. 7 nations of Canada. Okay, so right off the bat, we got about 16 fucking nations. We got 16 different tribes, okay? The Wabash Confederacy, that's the Wea, Piankeshaw, others. So the Wabash Confederacy, the Illinois Confederacy, a lot of fucking confederacies, okay? There's a lot of unionized tribes. These are like all the Native Americans. Eventually, Native Americans started saying, man, these white motherfuckers are taking over everything. And then they said, we gotta fucking fight them. And eventually they were able to kick all the British out. Once the British had lost the wars, Pontiac attacked all the fucking British forts. But then the United States went to, oh, no, that was British territory. They signed the fucking deed over to us, so now it's ours. Even though you've been living on here for, 9,000, 10,000 years. Well, we've been here for 10,000 years. Well, isn't that enough? No, it's not enough. Apparently not. So the Western Indian Confederacy achieved many victories over the U.S. forces in 1790 and 1791 under the leadership of Blue Jacket of the Shawnees and Little Turtle of the Miamis. They were encouraged and supplied by the British, who had refused to evacuate British fortifications in the region, as called for in the Treaty of Paris. The Illinois Confederacy, sometimes referred to the Illinois, or the Illinois, a group of 12 to 13 Native American tribes in the upper Mississippi River Valley of North America. The tribes were the Kaskaskia. Cahokia was a fucking huge mound, like one of the largest mounds ever. So, this was like a civilization, right? This is the, when Christopher Columbus and, De Soto and all them started coming over here, the agriculture was actually more advanced in the United States, in, pre-United States America, than over in Europe. We also, in the United States, had a tomato, we had a potato, we had corn, which none of Europeans had actually seen. So the agriculture was more advanced, technologically they were more advanced, and there was more stuff here too. So Cahokia was a huge civilization in Illinois. So Kaskaskia, Cahokia, Peoria, Tamaroa, Moingwea, Mishigamia, Chepusa, Chincoa, Coora, Cointanan, Espiminkia, Maroa, and Tampuara. Sorry, this is all from the Wikipedia, but the Tapuara. So that was all the fucking tribes that was in the Illinois Confederation. So Illinois Indians, but you're talking about 12 to fucking 13 different, tribes here. They were believed to be over 10,000 people. They spoke different dialects of the Miami, Illinois language, one of the Algonquin language families. So you got, Algonquin speaking, Miami, Illinois language speaking, Kaskaskia, Cahokia, Peoria, Tamaroa, Moingwea, Mishigamia, and a lot of these tribes were fighting each other. People say, oh, they're fighting each other. Like that, there's some truth to that. But with the Northwest Indian War, they're like, fuck this shit, and they united because they had a very clear common enemy. And that common enemy was Mad Anthony Wayne. Some people want to say, bad shit happened and that's just how it is. And in a way, I guess that's where we're at, but I think we need to make restitution. We need to make some sort of, that's a slap. It's a historical insult. That's a slap in their fucking faces. And, genocide, right? Wiped them all out. Where the fuck are they? And, so we need to, I think there's the reparations, I think integration, I think there's some ways we can actually make this shit right, and then, then we can sort of, there could be no justice on stolen land, so we need to make this shit right. Just the same thing with slavery, we need to make slavery right, and so let's see, what other tribes do we have? The Wabash Confederacy, Wabash Indians, number of 18th century Native American villagers in the area of the Wabash River, what is now the U.S. states of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. They were primarily the Weas and the Piankeshaws, but they also included the Kickapoos, the Mascoutins, and others. So Mascoutins, Kickapoos, Weas, Piankeshaw. Now they're mentioning some other ones here. Something about Half King, a Wyandot chief named Half King, warned Congress that the Wabash, Twitwi, and the Miami nations would disrupt U.S. surveyors, and the Congress promised reprisals if that occurred. This resistance movement culminated in the Northwest Indian War. So yeah, they wanted surveyors, they wanted to say this is our land, that's what the British said, and then they go in there and then there's all these Native Americans and they're like, we've been living here our whole lives, and then the Americans were like, well, we signed this piece of paper over in, Philadelphia or D.C. or wherever the capital was. So this piece of paper that we signed way over yonder is it trumps you guys. So fuck you all. The Iroquois were also known as the Haudenosaunee, the Rotenoceani, and they're a historically powerful group. And they were fighting forever. The Iroquois, the northern New York. There was a fucking genocide, George Washington directly. They were also, the Iroquois is where we get the idea for our federal government. The Iroquois may be the oldest surviving democracy in the entire world. I know that they were earlier than Iceland. Iceland is one of the, I think they brag about being the earliest democracy in the world, but the Iroquois was before them. And the Iroquois were, they didn't all vote or whatever, but they did have a federalist type of government, and they did have these council meetings, and I think the council meetings were somewhat democratic. The federal government, what we took from the Iroquois was the idea that the nation of the United States is one, even though there's 50 states or 13 colonies. That was the Iroquois idea. The Iroquois idea was that there are 5 and then eventually 6, the Tuscarora, the Hemp Peoples. The Hemp Peoples was added later, but the 5 nations before 1722 was the Iroquois Confederacy. They were made up of the Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, Seneca. And so you had 5 nations who were all the Iroquois, which is why Haudenosaunee was called the Longhouse. So they had a long house. Literally, they met in a long house because they could, unite all these 5 tribes: Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, Seneca. So they can unite all the 5 tribes, and it was all under one, which is just like the federalist system that the United States has today. Eventually, the Tuscarora peoples were added, and now you have 6 tribes all in one, all the Iroquois. That's the Iroquois, okay? So that's just some of the tribes so far, right? I just got to the 2 different confederacies here. 7 nations of Canada and the Council of 3 Fires. I haven't even got to them yet, and then there's still a whole list here, which are repeating some of them, but the Council of 3 Fires, Illinois Confederacy, 7 nations of Canada, Wabash Confederacy, Illinois Confederacy, Wyandot, Mississaugas, Menominee, Shawnee, the Lenape, aka Delaware, which is actually an exonym. Lenape is the right word. Miami, Kickapoo, Kaskaskia, Chickamauga, Cherokee, which would be your doublehead. That would be your doublehead, and that would be your dragon canoe, and possibly Princess Cornblossom. So the massacre at Yahoo Falls, which I'm talking about right now, that's your Chickamauga Cherokee, also called the Lower Cherokee. Chickamauga Cherokee is also called the Lower Cherokee, and the Upper Muskegee. So these are all the Native Americans that were part of the Western Confederacy. The Council of the 3 Fires was also the people of the 3 Fires. This is the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. So those are the 3 that's part of the Council of the 3 Fires. Chippewa, Ottawa, Potawatomi. Okay? The council's a long-standing Anishinaabe alliance of the Ojibwa, a.k.a. Chippewa, Ottawa, a.k.a. Ottawa, and the Potawatomi North American tribes. So that's the Council of the 3 Fires. 7 nations of Canada. That's the Mohawk of Akwesasne, the Mohawk of Kahnawake, the Mohawk in Anishinaabe, Algonquin and Nipissing of Kanesitake, Abenaki of Odenak, Abenaki of Becancour, now Wolanak, the Huron of Giuni now Wendake, and the Onondaga of Wegatchi. 7 nations of Canada, okay? So 7 nations of Canada. So these are the Native Americans that General Man Anthony Waynes are responsible for. The death, the destruction, the stolen of their land, the raping of the women in the land, and to just, it was all about land acquisition. Look out west. There's all this fucking land. So why would they not want to fucking go after that type of shit? And then every time with these wars, you had 3 French and Indian wars or 4 French and Indian wars total before the American Revolution even happened. It was, it's all about these empires fighting over Native American land, and the Native Americans are just proxies. They're just, they're given money, they're given food, guns, clothing, they're bribed, and then, rum, whatever, in order to get them to fight on their side. And then once they get, so they're like used to fight these wars of empire, but in their mind, perhaps they're using the empires. I know the Chickamauga Cherokee, they used the British, they took the British guns, but they were defending their homeland. And then after the British had conceded defeat, then they used the Spanish Florida as, they took their guns. So they were just using these different empires in order to give them weapons and ammunition and supplies in order to fight for their own cause, which is defense of themselves, defense of their family, defense of their land. And so at no point did any of that, the American Revolution didn't matter, French and Indian War didn't matter, none of that shit mattered to them. These are what the Europeans, the victors, were calling these wars. In their mind, it's they are attacking me, I'm killing them back. Now, the defenders of the Confederacy would say the same shit. Like, I don't know about the fucking Union cause or what the fuck ever, you're on my land. Well, it's not your land, because it was, that land was stolen way before you even got here. And that's, to talk about, who deserves this land, 10,000 years. They were here for 10 fucking thousand years. 1492 is Christopher Columbus in the West Indies. De Soto was, 1540, and he he went through a part of Kentucky. And then we don't see anybody till the 1600s, 1700s, 1776. There was only 200 people in Kentucky. So Kentucky wasn't even a state till 1792. So, the American Revolution had nothing to do with Kentucky. It had everything to do with killing Indians and taking the land. That's what the American Revolution in Kentucky meant. And the first battle in the Revolution was the Battle of Point Pleasant, and that was the Lord Dunmar's War. The Battle of Point Pleasant was fighting the Shawnee Indians, and then the Shawnee Indians, and then the last one was oh my goodness. So that's the first battle was the Battle of Point Pleasant. Johnny Logan, Taugeauga, the massacre of Yellow Creek. He fought, and then you had Lord Dunmar, which was the British. So all these people that eventually became Americans were British, and they were fighting in Lord Dunmar's war against the Native Americans. And then one of the last battles after the surrender of Yorktown, after Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, so after the military, that's what we're taught in our history books, that Yorktown was the last military battle, and then eventually the Treaty of Paris in 1783, 2 years after the Battle of Yorktown is what concludes the war. Well, there's actually a whole bunch more fucking battles that happens after the Battle of Yorktown, and that would be the Battle of Blue Licks. The Battle of Blue Licks is where Isaiah Boone, Daniel Boone's son, gets shot along with a whole bunch. It was one of the worst killings, one of the biggest victories for the Native Americans. Battle of Blue Licks was in northern Kentucky, and it was against Native Americans. So one of the very first war or battles is against the Native Americans. The last battle is against Native Americans. The American Revolution, is it against just the British, or is it to take the land from the natives for the Americans? I think it's the latter. Yeah, sure, Constitution, freedom, amendments, all men are created equal unless you're Cherokee, unless you're Abenaki, Huron, Onondaga, Mohawk, unless you're, black, unless you're, a woman. Only men are created equal, right? So no women are created equal. So that's, all these aristocratic land speculators fought all these fucking wars and drafted all these poor people into their wars so they could fucking take land. So Wayne County is named after General Mad Anthony Wayne. Fucking crazy Mad Anthony Wayne. And just the last, I'm going to read the Western Confederacy, then I'm going to go to the Battle of Fallen Timbers and name all those Native Americans too, because these are all the Native Americans that Mad Anthony Wayne is responsible for their defeat, for their destruction, for the death, for the killings, and then, you know, their land is fucking taken after that, right? There's no more resistance after this until 1812 with Tecumseh and all that, and then the West, and okay, there's way more fucking fighting with the Native Americans, so that's, it's a folly to assume that Mad Anthony Wayne stopped the fighting. Then the massacre, Yahoo Falls, is 1810, and then there was, Wounded Knee was 1890, and then there was, the second Wounded Knee, which was 1973. And they live in reservations today, and there's Black Lives Matter. So, I mean, to assume that slavery and the genocide of Native Americans don't have any effect for today is absolute bullshit. So, the Western Confederacy was sometimes known as the Miami Confederacy because of the main leaders, right? Blue Jacket, Little Turtle. And then you have the Council of the Three Fires, Iroquois Confederacy, Seven Nations of Canada, Wabash Confederacy, the Pankishaw, others, Illinois Confederacy, Wyandot, Mississaugas, Menominee, Shawnee, Lenape, Miami, Kickapoo, Kaskaskia, Chickamauga, Cherokee, and then the Upper Muskegee. So that's all the people that was in the Western Confederacy, all the Native Americans that were fighting in this, you know, against Mad Anthony Wayne and George Washington's War of Conquest, imperialist war to take land that the British had formerly claimed, but now the Americans were like, no, that's our land. And also the War of 1812, we tried to take Canada. We tried to invade Canada. And eventually, War of 1812 is a stalemate, and we just agreed to go back to the border. So it was a loss. It was a war we started to try to get the respect from the British. Tecumseh was killed. The White House was burnt down. But the borders stayed exactly the same. So between Britain and America, nothing changed. But Tecumseh was dead, and a lot of Native Americans were dead. And there was Richard Mintner Johnson. He was a Kentuckian, and he used that bloody shirt of killing Tecumseh to eventually become vice president and get into politics. So it was good. You killed Tecumseh, you're a good person. Well, I look at the killing of Tecumseh as one of the worst tragedies. The genocide of the Native Americans was one of the worst things that we could have done. We couldn't have lived in peace. Daniel Boone was able to live in peace. Daniel Boone was actually adopted by the Shawnee, right? By Blackfish. He was named as, I want to say, Big Turtle. So you had Big Turtle, you had Little Turtle, you had Blue Jacket. None of these we couldn't have worked together like Daniel Boone did. We could have. We could have gone for integration, but, you know, it was most of the people were like Hiram, Big Tooth Gregory, and they just wanted to wipe out all the Native Americans, including the kids and including the... I hope I find that. There's a watch that was beeping. So the, shit. Where's that at? I'm at the Battle of Fallen Timbers now, but, could we have integrated, could we have lived in conjunction and in peace with each other? Daniel Boone was able to do it. And, yeah, there were Native Americans that were violent, but there was also a lot of friendly Native Americans that were, you know, your village is there, our village is here, here's where we hunt, we don't kill each other, we respect that, and that we all have to hunt, and so we share the forest. Battle of Fallen Timbers. This is the last battle. The Native American forces, number about 1,500, were composed of Blue Jackets, Shawnees, Buckongahelas, Delawares, Miamis, led by Little Turtle, Wyandots, Ojibwas, Ottawas, Potawatomis, Mingos, and a British company of Canadian militiamen under Captain Alexander McCollop. The battle ended fairly quickly. Wayne's soldiers pressed the attack with a bayonet charges. Cavalry outflanked Blue Jackets' warriors, who were easily routed. The Indian warriors fled towards Fort Miami, but were surprised to find the gates closed. Against them, Major William Campbell, the British commander of the fort, refused to assist him, unwilling to start a war with the United States. Wayne's army won a decisive battle. Okay, so that Miamis were led by Little Turtle, Blue Jackets, Shawnees, Buckongahelas, Delawares, the Lenapes Wyandots, Ojibwas, Ottawas, Potawatomis, Mingos, I don't remember saying those. So these are all the tribes, all the Native Americans that Mad Anthony Wayne is responsible for. So when it comes to any, Doubleheads Cave, Hines Cave is in Wayne County. I'm sure there's more Native American things that happen in Wayne County, but the fact that it's named after a Native American genocided piece of shit, and then the fact that they want to rename, they want to top the fucking, the racism. No, what Mad Anthony Wayne isn't racist enough, so now we want to name the county Felix Zollicoffer. That has an effect. That has an effect of the psyche of the people that live in Wayne County, and to assume that, that racism doesn't live there, I think that it's clear that it does. It's in America, racism's in America, but, there's Confederate flags everywhere. There's also non-racist people there, so I'm not trying to say that everybody in Wayne County is racist, but I am saying that the county of Wayne County is named after a racist piece of shit, one of the worst racists out there. And no, I don't fucking forgive them. I use my standards for today. And how would you feel if the Canadians were to invade this country and say we want to take this shit back? Or what if all the fucking Native Americans that I just mentioned, if any of the people of the Miami or the Mingos or the Potawatomis was like, well, that's our fucking land, and they just started killing everybody that was on their land? That would be justice, right? Eye for an eye. The ancestors did it to their family. That was their family. That was their land first. They would have a good justification for doing such a thing. And so that's why we need to make peace with them, with the slaves, with anybody that we had done wrong in the past, so that we can move forward. Okay? It's a horrible historical insult. Yes, we are where we're at today, but to ignore or to justify that savagery, that barbarity, I mean, I can't do it. The Mingos, Potawatomis, Ottawas, Ojibwas, Wyandots, Little Turtle, Miamis, Lenape, Shawnees, and then all the Northwest Confederacy, the Miami Confederacy, Council of the Three Fires, the Illinois Confederacy, the Iroquois, and on and on. So, Mad Anthony Wayne, Wayne County, come on. Wouldn't you rather fucking honor Gatewood Galbraith? Why don't you be the Gatewood fucking county? Gatewood County. And everybody, raise marijuana all over those mountains, all around those rivers and streams, and be a paradise. Have marijuana gardens everywhere you go. Wouldn't that be nice? Come on, Wayne County. You want Gatewood County. Gatewood County would be better than Wayne County, or any other. I mean, honor whoever the fuck y'all want to honor. But Wayne's no good. I don't like Wayne. Fucking Wayne.